Reality doesn't bend to effort, it bends to frequency. Most people spend their entire lives pushing, forcing, chasing results that always seem to slip away by a thread. They call it ambition. They call it manifestation. But underneath it all, there is only noise. A constant hum of misalignment that confuses the very field they are trying to command. Because the universe doesn't listen to what you say, he hears what you an. You believe you are asking for abundance, but your body is vibrating with scarcity. You believe you are calling for peace, but your pulse whispers of unease. You believe you are radiating love, but your breath still carries fear. Words are irrelevant. The signal behind them is what determines the responses you receive. It's like trying to tune into a radio station by shouting at it. The volume doesn't change the frequency. The vibration does. And that's where the secret lies that almost no one notices, not because it's hidden, but because it's too simple for the ego to accept. You cannot make reality obey through the power of thought, nor through the insistence of will. You make her respond when becomes pattern that she recognizes. To control is not the same as to dominate. To control is to harmonize. It is the exact moment when your internal field ceases to contradict itself, and each cell begins to emit the same note. Clear, stable, irresistible. Imagine your life as an ocean of particles waiting for instructions. Every emotion, every breath, every silent belief is a conductor's baton. When your rhythm changes, everything around you moves. But when his rhythm falters, everything stops, indecisive, confused, not knowing which command to respond to. That's why so many people chase results and encounter only resistance. They send mixed signals to a field that understands only one language: frequency. So ask yourself, what signal are you transmitting right now? Not what you wish it's not what is repeated in statements, but the tone that vibrates beneath the skin, the invisible sound that accompanies every thought. Because reality doesn't wait for your permission, it's already responding, line by line, to what you send out every second. And when you learn to shape that signal, not with effort, but with alignment, everything that seemed impossible begins to reorganize itself. The effort dissolves. The force gives way. And what you once called a miracle becomes simply the natural rhythm of your own field. The most curious thing is that no one teaches you to perceive the invisible sound your body emits. From an early age, the world trained you to use force, to push, to fight, to insist, to resist. They taught you that power lies in dominating what is outside, when, in fact, true mastery begins in silence, within. You try to change the circumstances, but the frequency remains the same. It's like changing the scenery but keeping the same soundtrack. Nothing really changes, it only seems different for a few moments. And then you feel that emptiness, that echo after trying so hard. The mind says it's a lack of effort, but the body knows that's not it. Because there's a part of you that recognizes the sound of harmony, even if you can't yet produce it. It's like hearing an out-of-tune instrument and, without understanding music, realizing that something isn't quite right. It's your energy field asking for adjustment. The problem was never the desire. The problem is the noise that comes with it. When you vibrate with fear and hope at the same time, the universe hesitates. It doesn't understand whether to approach or retreat. When you say, "I trust," but breathe with a tense chest, the field senses the contrast and returns the same confusion. That's why so many live between advances and setbacks, like waves that come and go without ever reaching the shore. And it's not punishment, it's a mirror. The quantum field merely reflects the internal state that feeds it. Frequency is the language of creation, and the body is the translator. The mind can lie, but the heart rate cannot. The air that enters and leaves reveals what you truly believe. That's why, when someone finds coherence, that point where emotion and thought finally embrace, everything around them changes, even if nothing external seems to have moved. It's the field reacting, faithful, like a clean mirror. Few realize this, and even fewer choose to remain attentive. But it is precisely those who stay, those who learn to listen to their own signal, who begin to see the impossible bend. That is why so many people feel an impulse to stay here, following each new revelation. Because, deep down, they recognize this sound. It's the same one that has always existed, only now, it's beginning to align. And when this harmony stabilizes, something silent awakens. It's not grandiose, nor mystical. It's simply real. A kind of power that doesn't impose, but commands. And it is there, in that almost imperceptible instant, that the frequency ceases to be merely energy, and begins to become destiny. But before harmony reveals itself, there is chaos. There's always a moment when everything seems to fall apart, when you feel you're one step away from understanding, but something invisible pulls you back to the old pattern. It's at this instant that the frequency tests you most. The body tries to return to the familiar, even if that familiarity hurts. It seeks familiar discomfort because the unknown, even if it's light, is frightening. And that's where the silent struggle begins, the soul asking for expansion, the body asking for shelter. You feel your heart beat faster, your mind create 1,000 justifications, the air weigh heavily on your chest. Each breath becomes a battle between the old and the new, between the sound of fear and the whisper of confidence. And, for a moment, it seems the universe falls silent. No sign comes, no miracle happens. Only silence. A silence so dense it seems to observe you, waiting for your decision, to continue in the noise or to adjust your tone. It is in this invisible pause that many give up. They think that the absence of a response is a no. But the field never denies, it only reflects. And sometimes the reflection takes time, because there are still shadows within the mirror. The fear of change, guilt about the past, attachment to control. All of this distorts the signal. And the universe, patiently, waits until the sound clears. Some call this period emptiness. But emptiness is not absence. It is preparation. It is the interval between the last note of chaos and the first chord of order. It's as if the cosmos itself holds its breath with you, observing whether you can remain present when everything seems to stop. The truth is that frequency isn't mastered all at once. It's acquired little by little, like learning an ancient, forgotten language within one's own body. Each unresolved emotion is a syllable. Each conscious breath, a translation. And one day, without warning, the sound changes. Something realigns itself inside. Fear no longer screams, it only whispers. The body doesn't resist, it only observes. And in that instant, what seemed like chaos begins to reorganize itself in an almost imperceptible way. People react differently. Situations seem lighter. Life responds, but subtly, as if testing your consistency. Because the field, before giving you power, needs to be sure that you will know how to sustain it. And just when you think you've figured it all out, it shows you the next layer. Deeper, quieter, more demanding. The real proof that controlling your frequency isn't about dominating the world, it's about not getting lost within it. But what almost no one realizes is that the field also feels tenderness. It is not merely a mirror of your vibrations, it is a living presence, a silent intelligence that responds with the same gentleness with which you listen to yourself. When you stop fighting your own pain and begin to breathe it in gently, something changes. The weight doesn't disappear immediately, but it begins to dissolve at the edges. It's as if reality, tired of seeing you at war, offers you a new language, that of surrender. There are days when this process seems impossible. The body aches, thoughts race, and the mind insists on measuring progress. Why hasn't it changed yet? Why don't I feel peace yet? It asks. And the universe answers, with silence. Because the answer never comes in haste. It comes in the pause. In the instant you give up trying to control, and finally listen to what the field is trying to say. Imagine a dark room where someone lights a candle. The darkness doesn't disappear, it just recedes a little. That's how realignment works. Every time you breathe mindfully, a small flame ignites. A memory awakens. The frequency begins to stabilize, and reality, which previously tested you, now seems to cooperate. Not because everything magically worked out, but because you stopped emitting confusing signals. And it is at this point that many feel something new, a subtle warmth, a serenity that doesn't depend on circumstances. It's as if the air becomes denser, more alive. The world remains the same, but the sound changes. The tuning changes. And this is the moment when, almost without realizing it, the universe begins to adjust around you. As if it finally recognizes you. Perhaps that's why so many people feel the urge to leave a silent sign when something like this touches them. A way of saying, I felt it too, even without words. Because, deep down, we are all trying to remember that original state of coherence, that point where there is no struggle, only resonance. And the closer you get to that center, the more you realize that controlling frequency was never about power. It was always about reconnection. With the body. With the air. with the sound that vibrates behind every heartbeat. But the field still holds a mystery. Something that only reveals itself when you stop completely. When thought falls silent. When breathing ceases to be a physical act and becomes a bridge between worlds. It's curious how, when the body finally falls silent, the world begins to speak. Not in words, but in coincidences, in small gestures, in encounters that seem random but carry a meaning that only the heart understands. It's as if reality waits for you to align yourself before moving. And when it moves, everything takes on a different texture. Time slows down, the sound of the wind seems different, even the pauses gain meaning. But along with this calm comes something unexpected, the fear of lightness. After so long living in constant effort, the absence of struggle seems dangerous. The mind tries to convince you that if you relax too much, everything will crumble. It's the old reflex of control, disguised as responsibility. Then you breathe, and the field responds, reminding you that confidence is not inertia, it's direction without tension. There is something sacred in this surrender. A kind of force that doesn't need to impose itself to be felt. It's the energy of what simply is. You realize that the universe doesn't bend to will, but to vibration. There's no point in shouting a request if the heart still whispers doubt. Coherence is silent, and that's precisely what makes it irresistible to the field. At this point, something subtle begins to happen. People who vibrate at the same frequency start to appear. Situations that previously required effort begin to flow naturally. It's not a coincidence, it's physical and emotional. The harmony begins to organize everything that was scattered. And the more you anchor yourself to this frequency, the more life seems to guide you, as if leading you with your eyes closed, but in total safety. However, there's a hidden paradox here. The more you realize the power of this harmony, the more you also realize the responsibility of sustaining it. Because remaining coherent amidst chaos is an act of courage. It's resisting the temptation to return to the old rhythm, the one where noise seemed more comfortable than silence. And it is at this point that the field tests you again. It doesn't challenge you with losses, but with choices. Choices that reveal whether your new status is real or just temporary. And sometimes, a single misplaced breath is enough to make everything fall out of alignment again. But that's how learning takes hold, in the contrast between expansion and contraction, between faith and doubt. It's this movement that teaches you to sustain the vibration. And when you finally understand this, the fear of imbalance transforms into curiosity. The universe ceases to be something to be controlled, and becomes something you dance with. But there's an even deeper layer to this dance. One that doesn't reveal itself in the calm, but in the instant when chaos returns, and you have to choose whether to trust the sound you've learned to make, or whether to start screaming again. And then the universe begins to test what you've truly learned, not with words, but with silences. It places you before situations that seem to repeat old pains, but there's something different now. You observe them from another place. The same scenario, the same provocation, but the body responds with a different rhythm. Before, the impulse was to react. Now, it's to breathe. And in that simple act of waiting a second before acting, something changes. The field recognizes the new sound. That's when you understand that true coherence doesn't happen on calm days, but on days when everything threatens to crumble. When the message you receive is the opposite of what you asked for. When time seems to freeze and you feel you're once again on the edge of the abyss. It's in this space that reality silently asks you, do you really trust what you feel, or only when everything is under control? And the body hesitates. Because trusting without guarantees is like walking in the dark with a burning heart. It's keeping the pace even when the wind changes. It's breathing deeply while fear tries to convince you that it's too late. But it is also here that the miracle begins to form, not on the outside, but inside the chest, like a spark that refuses to go out. The world remains the same, but the way you perceive it changes. Losses are no longer sentences, they are portals. Delays cease to be punishments and become adjustments. And you begin to see the secret harmony behind the pauses, the way the universe pulls you toward the right rhythm, even when it seems to be pushing you away. There is a hidden beauty in all of this. Light doesn't eliminate shadow, it reveals it. Because without shadow there is no depth. And the frequency you hold now doesn't seek to eliminate what is dark, but to embrace the contrast. True balance has never been a straight line, it's a dance between extremes. between sound and silence, between impulse and surrender. And when that perception settles in, reality changes its texture. You begin to feel that something or someone is breathing with you, as if the universe itself, for a brief moment, leans in to listen to your rhythm. Not to judge you, but to accompany you. So you understand, controlling your frequency isn't about dominating the world, it's about aligning yourself with its heart. And the deeper you go, the more you realize that this heart beats in everything, in the pauses, in the uncertainties, in the voids. It's an ancient language, whispered between breaths. But there's something the field hasn't yet revealed. A layer that only becomes apparent when trust ceases to be a choice and becomes natural. It is at this point that the subtleties become evident. Answers begin to emerge from unexpected places, not as magical coincidences, but as echoes of the alignment you have silently built. That conversation that seemed lost finds a calm conclusion. The opportunity that seemed distant draws closer. The people around you begin to feel something different, although they may not know how to explain what it is. It's as if your vibration reorganizes the surrounding field, adjusting the collective tone, effortlessly, without announcement, simply by presence. With each coherent breath, you send a clear signal, and the universe, sensitive, precise, responds with the same frequency. Sometimes quickly, sometimes almost imperceptibly, but it always responds. However, along with this attunement comes a new kind of responsibility. Sustaining the field even when no one is watching. Maintaining harmony when the noise returns, when old patterns try to infiltrate again, when the ego wants to prove that it was the one who achieved balance. And here lies the true test. Because coherence is not an achievement, it's a living practice. The moment you try to forcefully hold on to it, it slips away. It's like trying to trap the wind. It only holds when you allow it to flow. And this flow, however paradoxical it may seem, is not passivity, it's power at rest. A silent power that transforms not through imposition, but through constancy. Imagine a stone thrown into a lake. The ripple that forms isn't violent, but it reaches every corner of the surface. That's how its frequency works when it's centered. It doesn't need to shout to be heard. It simply propagates, touching what is ready to be touched. And that's why so many people feel this energy and decide to stay here, following each revelation, not out of curiosity, but because something within them recognizes the sound of truth when they hear it. Transformation isn't an event, it's a sustained attunement. And the more you practice it, the more you begin to notice its reflections in every detail. In conversations that become calmer, in decisions that come with clarity, in days that were once heavy and now seem to have space to breathe. It's subtle, but profound. And perhaps, upon reaching this point, you too will realize this. That it's not about learning something new, but rather about remembering what has always been there, waiting for the right moment to vibrate again. If something within you recognizes this sound, perhaps it's time to let that recognition manifest. A simple thought, a word, or even silence. Because sometimes, the purest way to respond to a truth is simply to feel it. But the field is still preparing its next move. Something is beginning to align beneath the surface, and what is about to emerge will show that this frequency, your frequency, doesn't just attract realities. It creates entire worlds. There's a moment, almost imperceptible, when the field truly begins to reconfigure itself. Synchronicities become more frequent, coincidences more precise, and what once seemed like chance begins to carry purpose. It's as if reality gains a new grammar, silent, yet perfectly legible to those who have learned to feel instead of just thinking. But along with this new clarity, a different kind of challenge also arises. That of remaining present when everything around you tries to pull you back into the noise. The old frequencies don't disappear. They observe, waiting for a moment of distraction. They are thoughts that return with the force of old habits, reminding us that the mind is an expert at repeating what it knows. And yet, now you notice the difference. Before, these thoughts commanded. Now, they are just echoes. And the power lies precisely there, in recognizing the echo without responding to it. That is true mastery, not control of external reality, but inner silence in the face of chaos. Coherence begins to become a natural state, but it's not linear. There are days when the body vibrates in harmony with the whole, and there are others when everything seems distant, cold, disconnected. And it is on these days that practice proves itself. It's not on calm waves that one learns to navigate, it's in the ebb and flow of the sea. The environment observes, adjusts, gives back. And you, even without realizing it, are being silently shaped. Every choice now carries different weight. A poorly chosen word seems to alter the atmosphere around you. A well-placed pause changes the course of a conversation. And this is no coincidence, it's quantum precision. The universe reacts to what you emit, not to what you desire. Therefore, every breath, every gesture, every aligned thought becomes a subtle command that shapes the space around you. But there's something even deeper to it. When you start emitting this frequency consistently, reality doesn't just obey, it transforms to accompany you. People change, paths open up, and even what seemed impossible rearranges itself with an almost poetic elegance. However, the more the field aligns, the more sensitive you become. It's both a gift and a burden. What once went unnoticed now vibrates intensely within you. Sensitivity is the price of awareness. To see deeper also means to feel deeper. And sometimes, that's exhausting. Because seeing the pattern is a blessing, but maintaining lucidity is a challenge. Still, you continue. Something inside you knows there's no turning back, that once you learn to listen to the field, silence is never just silence again. The universe is in constant motion, and now you feel it moving with your pulse. There is no longer any separation between the observer and what happens. Everything pulsates in unison, an invisible dialogue between vibration and matter. But behind this harmony, something is brewing. A threshold is approaching. And what comes next will demand more than understanding. It will demand absolute presence. And then something changes again, but this time it's internal. The frequency begins to act not only on what surrounds you, but on who you are. The layers that once seemed solid, the defenses, the certainties, the masks, begin to dissolve before a deeper presence. It's strange at first, almost uncomfortable. It's as if the field, upon hearing you, also begins to show you everything that still vibrates out of sync. It doesn't punish you. It simply reflects. And the reflection is too clear to be ignored. You realize that reality doesn't just obey what you desire, it responds to what you uphold. And upholding something requires truth. There's no way to maintain a high frequency with fragmented intentions. The universe doesn't negotiate with dissonance. It returns what is coherent, and that includes the internal noise you pretend not to hear. Fear, resentment, silent doubt. All of this takes shape until it is recognized, breathed in, and finally, transmuted. This is where the journey becomes more subtle and more dangerous. Because the ego begins to use the language of light to hide its own shadows. It wants to control even the process of surrender. And you need to perceive the difference between raising your vibration and escaping what needs to be felt. Between being light and performing enlightenment. Between breathing what is and inventing a shortcut to what does not yet exist. True coherence is not a permanent state of calm. It's a dance between stillness and turmoil. It's being able to remain whole when everything around you tries to fragment you. It's feeling doubt and yet remaining. It's walking through your own chaos and still breathing in rhythm with the universe. That is the proof. Not of strength, but of presence. There is a moment, almost imperceptible, when the field seems to fall silent. No response, no signal. And that is the point at which many give up. But silence is also an answer. It is the field observing you, waiting to see if you truly vibrate with what you say you believe. It is the universe asking without words, do you trust, even when I confirm nothing? The nights grow longer. Synchronicities, for a time, disappear. The air feels heavy. But in the midst of this emptiness, something new begins to emerge. A kind of strength that doesn't come from euphoria, but from serenity. A faith that needs no guarantees. You realize that true control isn't about commanding the field, it's about becoming part of it. And when that understanding sets in, fear loses its meaning. Because you no longer need to predict the next step. It reveals itself as your heart beats. Life ceases to be an enigma to be solved and becomes a movement to be lived. There are still shadows. There is still doubt. But now there is something stronger than all of that. The silent certainty that reality is not a wall to be broken. It is a mirror waiting for your truest reflection. But there is something beyond that mirror. A turning point where frequency ceases to be merely a response and begins to create. And then, the field opens up. Not with noise, not with spectacle, but with a silence so complete that everything within you seems to align at once. It's as if, for a brief instant, the universe breathes along with you. The boundaries between inside and outside disappear. Time ceases to hurry, and that which once seemed distant, unattainable, reveals itself as close as the air entering your lungs. It is in that instant that you understand. The power has never been in controlling the frequency, but in being the frequency itself. Reality doesn't obey because you command it. It bends because you vibrate what it recognizes as truth. It's the perfect reflection of your coherence. When what you think, feel, and do walk together, the universe responds like a clear echo, returning the harmony you silently sustained. Nothing forced. Nothing demanded. Simply reciprocated. Because all creation is born from harmony, never from struggle. You find yourself different. The same situation seems smaller, reactions gentler, responses clearer. What once provoked anxiety now invites observation. What was once noise transforms into rhythm. And each heartbeat, each breath cycle, seems to carry its own intelligence, as if the body and the cosmos had made a secret pact. An agreement of reciprocity. I vibrate, and the universe hears me. But the most beautiful thing is realizing that there is no end point. Coherence is not a destination. It's a state that renews itself every instant. With every choice to breathe instead of reacting. With every gesture of presence amidst the chaos. With every pause where you decide to feel, instead of running away. It's simple, almost invisible, and yet it transforms everything. You understand that true mastery is not over the world, but over your own inner self. And that, by harmonizing it, all of reality reorganizes itself around you. People, opportunities, paths, even time seems to bend gently. And it is at this point that a new responsibility is born, to keep this vibration alive, not as a technique, but as a way of being. That's why so many choose to stay here, breathing together, following each layer that unfolds, because they know that learning doesn't end, it expands. Every word exchanged, every silence shared, is part of this field under construction. And perhaps, if something within you vibrated while reading, that's already a sign. A reminder that you are part of this larger pulse, this invisible symphony where every conscious presence alters the universe. So breathe once more. Not like someone trying to control, but like someone allowing it to flow. Feel the air entering, leaving, uniting worlds. If something within you has awakened, honor it. Leave a trace, a word, a silent sign that this movement has reached you. Because that's how the field strengthens, when each one who awakens chooses to sustain the frequency. And while the universe listens, it responds. It always has. It was just waiting for the moment when you would become the sound.